Dr. Steve Shafer, as some of you may know. Dr. Shafer was the provided expert testimony for the Michael Jackson trial. And he became quite a celebrity after that. In fact, I think they had talked about even making a movie. And they were searching far and wide for someone who would be able to fill his shoes. And I think George Clooney might be playing the role.
Kira, thank you so much. It's always, this is really, I think, my favorite meeting. It's always so much fun to be at Kira's meetings, which are just spectacular. These are cases that in some way or another I've been involved with, and I wanted to sort of share what those experiences have been. So first I'm going to talk about murder, 2 cases of propofol involving murder. And in the first case, the perp, as it were, is Oliver Travis O'Quinn, and the victim is Michelle Herndon. This was in Gainesville, Florida. Outside, by the way, one recurring theme is that people who do this aren't very smart. Numerous items, including syringes, needles, 220 empty ml vials of 1% propofol, were outside in grocery bags lying on the ground adjacent to the garbage cans. Really? The left antecubital fossa had a pinpoint puncture wound. No other postmortem abnormalities were noted. And they basically said this was a fatal dose that was administered. I think what happened to get the blood level so high is that he gave a first dose, watched the watched the victim, and then probably about 10 minutes later, somewhere around here, a second dose of propofol was given. And with the second dose of propofol given, the person had been apneic pretty much this whole time period here. And with that much apnea, obviously, you're now going to start to have brain damage. And with brain damage, you're not going to have return of spontaneous ventilation. A second dose was given about here, and the patient probably went into circulatory arrest somewhere in this area here. What's going on? And he said, well, you know, he's been sick for a while, and so they noticed these puncture wounds here in the antecubital fossa. He said, yeah, he saw the doctor today. Doctor probably did some blood tests, but he's been really sick for a long time. So they just buried him. And just said died of natural causes, no autopsy. But the coroner did say, I'm going to send some drug tests to the laboratory, just routine. So at a ball game 6 months later, and you got to think there was alcohol involved, Carrie Willoughby was talking to her stepsister, Billy Jr.'s own daughter. And the daughter said, we never heard about those blood samples. What do you think happened to them? And Carrie said, I don't know. I never heard anything either about those blood samples. I sure hope that they don't show propofol and Norcuron. So the sister, when she went back, called the DA's office and just said, I just had the damnedest conversation with my stepsister. Did you look for propofol and Norcuron? And the DA said, well, no, we just looked for the usual stuff, you know, methamphetamine and heroin and marijuana and cocaine. But no, we didn't look for those. So they sent it off to the state lab. And they came back from the state lab, and here's what the state lab documented. Propofol level, 1.8. Vecuronium and vecuronium's metabolite, basically 0.1 and 0.3. And this is really interesting, a huge concentration of pseudoephedrine. So they brought Carrie Willoughby in for questioning and then charged her with murder. Then the next case is the one that was referred to earlier. This is the case of Conrad Murray, and the victim, as you know, is Michael Jackson. So here's what we knew before the trial ever got underway. We knew Michael Jackson died at home. It came out within 2 days that Conrad Murray had been giving Michael Jackson propofol to sleep for 2 months prior to Jackson's death. 2 months. Some people said this drug shows how dangerous propofol is. I think it shows how safe the drug is. You know, that somebody who has no clue what they're doing can use it for 2 months and not kill the person is amazing to me. He had no monitoring, no infusion pump, he had no resuscitation, and he kept no records. On the day Jackson died, he said he had stepped out for 3 minutes, but he actually stepped away for 45 minutes and had multiple phone calls that always showed, was evidenced by his cell phone. Evidently, the last call ended when he found that Jackson had arrested. He delayed calling 911 for 20 minutes. The first responders who came in, he asked them to help him tidy up. And when the responders came, he never mentioned propofol. All that he admitted to was giving 4 milligrams of lorazepam. Propofol's clearance is so fast that the blood levels from any of those would be an order of magnitude less than what was measured in the femoral vein. Therefore, I said that he had an infusion. And there was a very weird piece of evidence. The very first responder, member of the security detail for Michael Jackson, came in and said he saw an IV pole at the head of the bed, and the IV pole had a plastic bag, and he described a bag of saline. And he said inside the plastic bag was a bottle with blue writing on it. And inside the bottle with the blue writing was a white substance. And I remember reading this saying, it sounds like there's a propofol bottle inside an IV bag. What the heck? Well, it turns out that the bag has a slit. So I simulated the results of a 100 ml infusion of propofol. And with the 100 ml infusion of propofol, it's no problem getting to the levels in the femoral vein. And Michael Jackson might have gone apneic anywhere in this apneic threshold. And if he had, he would then have died. And basically, if he died there, that would explain the levels in the femoral vein. If Michael Jackson had survived to the end of the infusion, had he actually survived to the end of the infusion, again, propofol's kinetics are so fast that they'd still be about 5-fold too low just 10, 15 minutes later. So the levels would have been too low. So he died while the infusion was running. There have been no case reports describing instantaneous death. Remember, it's got to be in 90 seconds because you've got to stop right when the peak hits. Even 2 minutes later, the levels are too low. It's never been described, instantaneous death with propofol. I checked with David Goodell, the U.S. product manager who screened every propofol AE report for about 20 years in the United States. I checked with Ian Glenn, who discovered propofol. And in the UK, I checked with the FDA. Nobody's ever seen that. Here's their putting that case forward in court. They said that this is called disposition in male volunteers of a subanesthetic dose of propofol in an oil and water emulsion. And they looked at this, and here what they say is this. They said analysis of the urine showed that less than 0.3% of the dose was present as cyclohexane extractable radioactivity. Due to the low count, the extracts were not analyzed. So they picked up some radioactivity that came out in cyclodextran. And it was such a small amount, they didn't try to analyze it chromatographically, so they didn't really know what they were looking at. Michael Jackson had 85 micrograms of propofol in the urine. That was most likely propofol metabolite, but there's actually a study that's looked at propofol and with a proper assay that came out 20 years after the Simons paper. And based upon that study, Michael Jackson didn't receive 100 mils of propofol. He received 200 mils of propofol, 200 milligrams total. That's what the urine data, when we finally looked at it, really shows. Basically, they found
Conrad Robert Murray guilty of the crime of involuntary manslaughter.
And he was found guilty for all the things that were known during the trial. And my job was just playing whack-a-mole with all the crazy stuff that the defense put forward to try to switch the blame over to Michael Jackson.